Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the nonprofit Tech Shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hi folks, this is Stjepan. I'm with Maarten. We are at our episode number 16. Today we are covering Is Attribution a Lie? And before we jump into it, I just want to give you a quick brief. Why are we talking about attribution? So seeing any CRM, and we mostly talk about HubSpot, I think attribution is probably the most dangerous dashboard or reports that you can see in any portal, because probably you need to defend the data. And we are going to try to pull that report apart by going into some of our questions and talking points, and not because we want to make a RevOps harder, but because if you're going to stand in front of your CFO and talk about where revenue comes from, you will need to understand what the data is actually telling you and what is quietly hiding. And because Maarten is here, and he's the guy that you go when you need to set up those reports and data and everything else, I will kick it in with a question for Maarten. What's the worst attribution-based decision you ever seen a company make?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. The worst attribution-based decision. First of all, I guess just to circle back to what you mentioned, I think that's indeed one of the most, or the type of conversations with the CFO. Many RevOps people are not very reluctant to having. Right. Those are often tricky conversations. You're not 100% sure on the data. That's kind of the name of the game with attribution. That's why I feel like it's been a topic and will continue to be a topic forever, right? Which is also why there's always new tools on the market that promise you clean attribution. And it I don't know for you, Stjepan, but for me, it feels like that narrative has been on a loop now for years, where it's like, and now finally there's a way that to get the right story from your data. Oh, wow. And every year it's the same thing. And it continues to be a topic. So clearly there is not a clear cut answer to this is how you do attribution, which is, I guess, kind of the very nature of it. But yeah, I guess, and so back to your question then, what's the worst attribution-based decision you've seen? There's a lot, and there's a lot of angles we can go through here. I think the first one would be the classic one of over-engineering, right? Over-engineering a very complex attribution-based model when it is not needed. And when I say not needed, meaning, yes, everyone wants to get insights into what is driving revenue, what is driving deals, but sometimes it's a lot easier to get that just conversationally, right, from clients, right, getting that and putting all of that information together than building out fancy reports. So I think the main one that comes to mind at one point is with the company, they're enterprise level sales, so they don't have a huge amount of deals that they're analyzing. I remember we were running reports on attribution for about 40, 51 deals over the past, I forget the timeline exactly, but we were looking at a time frame of 40, 50 closed deals, and we were running extremely complex attribution models. Attribution models, not just in terms of what drove the lead, but what drove specific micro conversions that drove the lead. Anyway, it was fun stuff to work on, but when you zoom out of it, you think, all right, this is 40, 45 different leads. They had a sales team of around 8 people. That's 5, 6 clients per person. Just knock that out in a week or two, talk to everybody, ask the question, by the way, how'd you get to us? What's your story, etc. That's often going to give you a lot more insight than trying to puzzle together every single touch point in a very complex dashboard. So that would always be my go-to in terms of worst attribution-based decision is don't overcomplicate it and get the information from the source. I love a good attribution dashboard as much as the next guy, but at times that's not what you need. And the answers you're looking for are just right there. Just talk to the clients you brought in. And then they'll often tell you a story that at times will not align with what you're seeing in the reports, right? The classics of, hey, actually I saw multiple stories on LinkedIn. And then at one point I decided to check you guys out, found in the website, okay, you were showing up as direct traffic or organic search, but actually it seems like LinkedIn had a um,
Yeah.
big part to play. These things will come to
I
light. So yeah, that would be the first one.
I agree. I think it's like depending if you're early, like for example, early stage, like you probably don't want to put your all of your cards into efficiency. Probably you want to get volume first. Like you want to create those opportunities, and then you can efficiently see the story and the journey and everything that you mentioned. And the second one is probably, yeah, ties to what you said. Like if you have one or two channels, you know what is working. You ask your customers. You have
Test it.
like
Yeah.
something. Yeah, you don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need to spend a lot of time and investment getting that done, especially if you're early, as I said, and like probably your priority is volume, not efficiency. And
Yeah.
basically it's like also like how are the decisions being made. So like is the budget holder on your company making decisions based off that the attribution model that you have, or like these decisions are, I don't know, cyclical or whatever. So just making sure that like you tie everything together before you like, oh, let's
Yeah.
build the best attribution model for us.
And yeah, and to some degree, right, exactly, like try and tie everything together as much as you can, and also just be aware that sometimes you can't. Like there are going to be touch points you cannot measure, right? There's word of mouth, there's going to be conversations at events, and unless everyone logs every single thing perfectly, you're just always going to have that, right? And so I think being aware of that, I guess we can touch on that at a later point as well, is when we do get quote unquote accurate attribution data, what actually should you do with that? And I think you'd agree with the fact that it is a starting point to look into a channel versus an actual response, an actual thing that you should action immediately. Search is driving leads, so let's push search campaigns. Oh no, that means start looking into search and start seeing how come it's showing up in our attribution model as much. But I think, yeah, I think that's that's the main one. Try and tie it all together. Be aware of things that live outside of it. And I guess one thing that I would add to that, right, is I guess finding the balance in complexity. Meaning, if there are use cases where it makes sense to go very deep into building out your attribution model, but you would only do that if you have the volume that permits it, right? You're not talking about overanalyzing 50 deals, but you're talking about hundreds, thousands of deals. Like you have actual data that you can work with. If you're operating at a volume like I know Meta and a Google would do, where they actually deliberately cut out channels from specific control groups, and they say, "Hey, let's see how this group performs with Meta and email, but no search campaigns," right, and vice versa. Like they have that much volume that you can actually start doing testing like that. Now, smaller orgs are not going to you're not going to deliberately cut back on specific marketing channels in certain segments as easily, right? You kind of shoot yourself in the foot, or that's what it would seem like. But if you're operating on those larger scales, that is something that makes sense. And then you will actually be getting more, I guess, more accurate insights, right? Because then you're not just looking at, hey, what combination of channels is contributing, but no, if I actually eliminate one, what is then the impact, right? But again, you have to be in a pretty, good position in order to be able to even do
Yeah.
something like that. So anyway, I guess
And
be aware of where you're currently at in your organization. How many deals are you actually looking at? How much can you manually verify? How much is happening outside of your trackable ecosystem? Take all that into consideration to then determine what your attribution model should look like, how simple or how complex it should be, and then b, what you actually want to do with that. Because I guess that is, and that's maybe another leading up to a second question, Stjepan, that we kind of touched on. I'll push this one back to you. But when we do get attribution reports and dashboards set up and we start getting those initial insights, right? Email, LinkedIn, et cetera, things that are driving leads, what do we actually do with it? What are action items that you do with it? And yeah, I guess I'll push that one to you. But what would you say is sort of the immediate step you do when you get learnings from your attribution model.
Okay, so the immediate step is once we analyze the attribution model, the sources, the channels, what are we producing, how it ties to our revenue, is probably talking to the team actually doing the selling,
Yeah,
like probably
right.
talking to my sales teams or AIAs,
And
and making
verifying,
sure that they're
essentially,
verifying,
right?
like, is this correct?
Yeah,
Like, is our attribution model that we just built, that we are seeing correct, and not making it in like a silos, like, okay,
yeah,
I'm a RevOps person and only a couple of people know what the attribution model shows. So I think that's
yeah,
where I see most mistakes is like go to somebody, try to verify, or what I will suggest is maybe do a survey that's saying like how many deals you think you brought by LinkedIn in the last quarter, ABC, and just survey
yeah,
your team so you don't like maybe I don't know pull them into when you show them. And they probably will be like scared and they will say yeah this is correct, just so you don't bother them, and
yeah,
probably just like do a survey, and then on after a survey try to see if that is somewhere between, and then do conversations. And I think
yeah,
just verifying will be the next step, and after you
yeah,
verify you can then do the next step, and that next step is okay, did we get it, is there like any like issues, gaps, why are there gaps, and how we can fill those gaps, and who we need to talk to fill the gap, or do we need to do something else to fill the gap. And
yeah.
yeah, what do you think?
No, 100%. Yeah, the exact same is verified it with reality, right? With the people on the ground. Does this makes sense? Um, Actually, I have a great example of this. This is a classic one, right? Where everyone has these, not everyone, but a lot of companies have on their forms, on their demo forms, or whatever it may be. How did you hear about us, right? How did you hear about us? Drop down, select, and then you know someone typically on the marketing side would put a bunch of options there, etc. So you see this pretty much everywhere. One use case where we had this, right? We had the how did you hear about us? It was set up as a mandatory field, so people had to fill it out, which is already eh, raises questions about how serious are people going to answer versus do they just want to get through the form, right? And then they had way too many options, like 25 options in there. It's like, all right, no one is scrolling through that. No one is that motivated to tell you how they heard about you. Just no one is. Really, no one is. And then the top three, how did you hear about us options, right? And I forget which one it was. I think it was like LinkedIn. I guess it was LinkedIn, Google, or referred from a friend, something like that. But I'm making that up, but there were three. And those are by far the biggest three reasons why people had heard about them. Okay, great. So marketing was constantly bringing up those numbers. We were optimizing towards it, etc. Turns out those were the first three options in the drop down list that no one bothered to go through. And since it was mandatory, people just clicked that open, saw it, thought, oh Jesus, I'm not whatever. Click the first one and move on. And then so Ed, this was the perfect example of, and again I forget exactly, this was a couple of years ago. I forget exactly what the three options were, but let's say it was LinkedIn. We then went to the team and said like, hey, does this make sense? Like almost like 70% are coming through LinkedIn. Is that what you guys are hearing as well? Oh no, not at all, right? No, this one came from a referral, and this one actually they downloaded all these assets. They came in through an email campaign, a cold outreach, whatever. And then we reversed or we tested hypothesis, replaced the top three options in that drop down with three different ones, and the next week those were the three biggest drivers. So it was like okay, and that was an uncomfortable truth because they had been building on that for several months, really. Like this was a main number that was brought up in weekly marketing sales meetings, and that they were optimizing towards, that they were putting resources towards, and they're doing it all based off of wrong information. And it's just a wrong setup of having a mandatory field with way too many options, and then people essentially just clicking through it, and then just
Yeah,
relying on that information blindly without checking it, without verifying it. They're like, hey, does this make sense? Do 70% of our leads come from deals? And then that you only have to ask that question a couple times. with people who are actually talking with the clients to figure out that, oh no, actually this is complete BS. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember some of that, but basically, it's like what I wanted to add to is when I'm researching like a new tool and signing up, like probably every new tool has how did you hear about us? Like, and I just click the first one, and if I
Well, there
need
you
to
go.
do if I need to
Yeah.
click other, if like I have time and I click other and then they ask me to fill it out, like I'm just like clicking the first one. So I think it's better to maybe ask it after a week. Like let's say you sign up for some kind of like AI tool, like don't ask me right now because I just want to get into the tool and maybe do
Yeah.
something. Maybe ask me in
Yeah.
a week because I'm on a freemium or something. Like, can you can you let us know how did you heard about us, and we will give you
Yeah.
10 credits or
Yeah.
something that makes sense, and then you can probably with 90% be sure that that's how I heard about you. Like if I'm
Yeah.
seeing first LinkedIn, I will clicking LinkedIn, even if then probably like you send me a link to something, to
Yeah.
Gamma or I don't know, whatever tool we used recently.
Yeah.
Like I'm
And I
not
think that's,
spending any time giving you
yeah,
information before I verify that that tool makes sense for me and I will use it. Like I'm
exactly.
just, and I think most people are that way. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
100%. And I think it comes from I guess, I think everyone on the marketing side would agree that, hey, firsthand information like that is more valuable than whatever we track. So the instinct is, let's, as soon as we can get that information, we should, we should get it. So that's why we put it on the very first form someone fills out, right? Oh, they're requesting a demo. They're trying to get to talk to us. So we need to ask it then and there. And again, in some journeys and flows, it can make sense. I'm not saying you should never add that to a form. We add it all the time. So
Yeah.
it's not, I don't think it's a blanket statement to say you should never ask it when people are requesting a demo. But since it is very valuable information, right? It is straight from the horse's mouth, right? Hey, where did you hear about us? Tell us about it. We do want to make sure that it's accurate, right? And like you mentioned, actually postponing that, asking that question later in the funnel, where you're going to get less responses, right? Less people will get there. By definition, it's a funnel. But if you ask it at that point, they might be more motivated to give you not only a more accurate answer, perhaps a more elaborate answer, right? This is
Yeah.
also why, hey, if someone is an existing client, they've had plenty of conversations. At that point, someone can actually just pick up the phone and ask them, right? Like
Yeah.
once you get to that point, you can really get great information. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just another one to be mindful of. The earlier we can get it in the stage, the better. We all love firsthand information that we can get directly from prospects, from contacts, from clients. But you might be jeopardizing your accuracy by asking it too
Yeah.
early, especially if you're making it.
Don't make it like it's set in stone if you like ask it at first touch and like you
Yeah,
don't revisit it. And I think that
yeah,
that ties probably into what you said, like some tactics, like okay, ask it on the first interaction. You can also postpone it after a week or something, or even if you ask it on the first interaction and it's a demo booking, you can easily once they book a demo say, oh, here are some questions that can help us prepare for a demo or something, or if you share an
sure,
asset
right.
or a
Yep.
content afterwards, you can ask it again. And I don't think nobody will be bothered. And I
Hmm.
also think like what I'm seeing is like sometimes people don't ask stuff on forms, and it's because like they think it bothers them, but like you are not your database. Like people
Hmm.
don't work as you work, and I think that's also the mistake that I'm sometimes doing is like, oh, don't put the pop-up here because I don't like pop-ups. But like you're not your database, and then probably just like do it. It doesn't cost you anything, but don't be 100% reliant on it. Try to
Yeah,
test it afterwards, like in a month or whatever. As you said, you just change the bottom tree to the first tree and the results changed. So like
yeah,
that's a learning curve to maybe do that A/B test, see if
yeah,
like people are scrolling your 25 fields or they are not scrolling your
yeah,
25 fields. So you're A/B
yeah,
testing that that little field.
A/B test, verify, yeah. And I think at that, because if you do all that, when you are then bringing your attribution story, right? So if we go all the way back to the beginning of, hey, I'm going to the CFO and I'm telling him where our revenue is coming from, right? I think that's where then you also want to make that separation, right? Where there's some things that you can tell with absolute fact, and those absolute facts are usually not necessarily telling a story, but it is, hey, what has actually been driving, last click conversions, right? Hey, actually, our emails are driving this many deals, meaning X amount of deals came in after someone clicked on an email, etc. That's all that means. Does that mean that email is pushing users through a journey and going from awareness to intent? Nope, none of that. The only thing that tells us is our emails are directly converting X amount of deals. That second part then, I think is more narrative focused, where you look at all the numbers, right? You build your attribution model, you've picked up all the different touch points, search, meta, email, etc. And then there was an event, and then we see if there are event attendance or non-event attendance. We see X amount of impact on the conversion rates. Great, bring all those numbers and data, but I would always argue, like, put a very big asterisk next to everything and say, like, these are not absolute numbers. We can never know 100% if something is driving 20% or 27% of deals. All of that is, as fancy as your model looks like, it's never going to be 100% accurate. So I always say, like, present it as such. Like, it's a narrative. You're telling a story. You're using numbers to back it up, but it is, at the end of the day, it is a narrative that you then still want to verify, get subjective opinions on as well, get firsthand data and quotes that you can merge in there. So that's always how when I approach these kind of attribution style QBRs, essentially, where you're looking back at what drove the data, is always make the distinction between those two: the hard facts, which are just more, they're interesting to know what is driving into deals, what is the first thing people interact with that we can measure. It's that, but then I'll clarify that this is the first interaction that we've measured. Does that mean it's the first time they've heard of us? Not at all. We don't know, right? Just explaining what exactly we can measure, and then you combine that with more of the narrative, right?
It's somehow giving an extra layer of the definition of what has happened at each stage, and then explaining to somebody that makes like, oh, this doesn't mean that they first heard about us.
Yeah.
It just means that they did this action, and let's go back and see what initiate that action. But I know, like, we talked a lot about this, but then to maybe try to answer a question to our audience is, what do you actually then look to understand where pipeline is really coming from? Just like a couple of things that somebody can look right now to understand where pipeline is coming from, if they have, like, if they're early, if they're simple. So what do you look like? What will you recommend?
I don't think it, I feel like this is very much in line with what we've been saying so far, in the sense that it's, you'd start with what is trackable, right? So you would look at, again, if you're working out of HubSpot or most CRMs, where there's an automated original source setting, right? It just automatically determines if you, Stjepan, came into the system after clicking a Facebook ad or after organically searching the website or direct traffic, blah, blah, blah. So that's the first thing. But again, it's just an indicator, right? It gives you a general idea of where folks are converting in from. Doesn't tell you much more than that. But that is definitely a good starting point, which you would then want to verify with, again, with salespeople, with people talking to leads, right, to confirm all that. I would then, I guess, and this is where I find it very difficult to put like a general rule of thumb, because this at that point I feel like it's very org per org. But if you have the ability to set up a more advanced attribution model, one thing that you could look into is, setting up not just your end conversion, your demos, whatever, right? That's your final goal that you're driving people towards, but setting up these micro conversions, custom behavior events that you're then also tracking: downloads, page views, pricing, page views, etc. And not just tracking, but also building an attribution model for. Now, this is dangerous, because I say this, and before you know it, you build out an overly complex attribution model for not just end conversions, but also micro conversions. And There's a lot more data to misinterpret that way as well. But if you do it correctly, it can give you an even more holistic view on which micro conversions are driving the final conversion, and then which marketing channels are driving each of those micro conversions, right? So that is an option to, or a path to go down that I wouldn't recommend for everyone. But I think if you're generally dealing with high volume of leads and deals, depending on your industry, right? But high volume, where that makes sense, and you have a lot of these measurable touch points that you can set up, then looking into attributing marketing channels to those custom behavior events, to those micro conversions, as well as then your final conversion would be an interesting one as well. But all of that is only if you have the resources. Otherwise, I would just say, how many deals have come in? How many salespeople do I have? Can each of them call 5 people this week? Yep, let's get the input. That would always be my first my first go-to, and to never overly rely on whatever the initial data tells you. Just verify, check. I think the last one, and an important one as well, that we haven't necessarily, well, we have kind of touched on it, Stjepan, is the question of before you, let's say we get some information on how our attribution works. We know which channels are driving it in. We've actually going down the path of verifying this now also with the teams internally. A question always to ask is, hey, if I confirm my hunch here that email is driving in 70% of, or has a 70% impact on new deals versus 50%, if I go out of my way and confirm my hunch is true, what would we actually do differently, right? Would this actually trigger me to now say, hey, we should actually invest more in email campaigns, et cetera? Or do we say, no, actually our current volume is already quite high. We would just continue to do what we do. If the answer is the latter, which often it is, right? Often not always, but often the answer to that question of, hey, what would we do differently if this initial attribution that we see is true? If the answer to that is we wouldn't really do much different, we'd continue to do what we do, it's just proof that it works, then definitely don't over analyze or overdo or put too many resources into getting the exact numbers there. So yeah, I think that's another, I guess, general tip that I would give there is, and that's coming from someone who's gone down many of these rabbit holes, only to then end up with, I figured out exactly how much search versus meta versus link up is bringing in new deals. And what's the conclusion? Cool. That's just good to know. I can put a nice report together. Are we going to do anything different? No, not really. It works. It's a good balance. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I spent way too much time confirming that, perhaps. So anyway, take all those things into account, I would say.
It's basically like, are we using attribution to make better decisions moving forward, or we just want to build attribution to defend decisions that somebody or we already made?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's like what you just said. It's like, oh, our marketing emails are just like fire. Okay, we just confirm it. Don't do anything else. Like don't improve it, don't test it, don't change it. So yeah, I get it. I saw that a couple of times, but yeah. Okay, so anything else before we go to our, like, any tools specific that you would like to flag, maybe to help with attribution? Tools. I know you started with every year there's like 5-6 shiny tools. We figured out attribution, whatever. But like, is there any tools that you can recommend that can help folks, or some that don't help or just complicate?
I think the only other thing that I would call out as sort of I guess, a best practice thing to look out for is when you're looking at setting up these attribution models and essentially looking at user journeys, right? What brought a deal, what brought revenue, being very aware of whether what you're tracking on a contact versus a company level, because I see those getting mixed up all the time. And when I say mixed up, primarily it means that when you're looking at enterprise level sales, multiple people involved, et cetera, right? It's a big thing. Often there's a dozen people involved in getting a deal over the line. If in your CRM you have your one contact that you're essentially tracking and you're building your whole attribution model on how that one contact came through, you can get very wrong data, right? Because often, and then we've seen this happen quite often, the company is looking into your tool. Head of marketing tells the performance marketing manager to download a case study to have a look at it. So that that he just goes directly to the website, downloads it, has a look at it, etc. The attribution now shows that this company came from direct traffic, but that might not be the case. That head of marketing may have actually talked at an event to your head of marketing, and that's actually the original source. But if we were to overly rely on building our attribution model and what we can track based on that one specific contact, that would give us a completely different end view, right, of how that company became a deal. So I guess I would just round it up by saying that is, especially if you're more enterprise level sales, make sure that you're tracking on a company level, meaning you're taking the aggregate of all contacts associated to a company, seeing how all of them came into your system, right, at which touch points happened there, and then build out a type of lead scoring company journey model, right, that you actually use to look at how deals came in. So that's the last one that I would call out.
Yeah, I think like buying groups. Essentially, if you have
It's
buying groups,
yeah, right.
yeah,
And just
yeah,
not
okay.
again the general trap with attribution is interpreting data wrong, and that's just another way of potentially interpreting the data wrong. This is whether it's because your top 3 fields in a form are mandatory, and therefore you're interpreting it wrong. That's a way to wrongly interpret it. Another one could be, oh, you're actually just looking at one contact who's part of a 25-person buying committee, and you're essentially now attributing the deal that came in to that one person's journey. That's not how that deal came. That's how those are the actions that one person took. So with attribution, and I guess that's why it always has been and will continue to be such a topic, is because there's so much that you can do wrong with it, which sounds very intimidating in a way, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and now with
There's a lot
like
of
AI coming into the picture, with like source is AI, like we
oh
see that like probably just like never ending, like you said, like now, okay, it's AI source, but like what AI cited? Did they cited
I
Reddit? Did
don't
they cited
yeah.
whatever, like
Well, that's
Quora?
another one. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
AI search is another one. I thought, and I don't know if you were going to this point as well, but what I've definitely seen as well is because attribution it's messy, it's complex, it's that. It's the typical use case that people think, oh, AI can fix it. So let me just plug it into it, and AI will just tell me where this lead came from, and then people overly rely on it. It's oh, I've seen this too many times, like more times than I can count, where because it's a bit of I guess I would say a not a taboo topic, but attribution just becomes frustrating topic. Everyone wants, just black on white, exact answers, and it's just so hard to get them because attribution is a little bit of this messy gray area thing at times that people just say, all right, AI, plug it into AI. AI will tell me the story. AI will essentially just do what you do quicker and kind of make up a story, but you cannot just rely on it. So I've definitely seen people go down what I would call the wrong path there as well. Is because it's just something that, including myself at times, want to just push off my plate. Like, oh, this is sometimes a bit of a messy story to try and tell, that people just overly rely on AI for it. So yeah,
yeah.
definitely don't
It's
do that.
basically a researcher job plus somebody that knows what they need to look. You need to understand the industry
Yeah,
the organization is in, and
and
like you need to
AI
tie
doesn't have
everything
that
together.
subjective
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like AI is only going to do it is really only going to be looking at the numbers, and it might spot some trends and put some things together that perhaps you wouldn't, but it's not going to, you know, talk to Jeff in sales and ask him if, hey, LinkedIn is in fact indeed the main source for driving in. Like, you see, there's just there's limitations there, and I think especially when it comes to attribution, like we talked, you want to verify everything. That's exactly something that, you know, AI is going to replace us for a lot of things. That is not one of them yet, right? Like there's still that human subjective part, that is
yeah.
quite key. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, yeah. Anything else, or we can go to the most fun part of this of our
Let's do it.
podcast.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's do it.
so your
Beer of
beer
the week.
of choice.
Beer of choice. I want to had it again this week. It was hard to find. It's the Westmalle Triple. I'm always sticking with Belgian beers. I will diversify at one point, but yeah, Westmalle Triple. I don't think I reviewed it before. I may have. It's one of the favorites. It's kind of like the king of triple beers, I would say. Very, very popular one, especially in Belgium, but also around. Um, Not a whole lot to say about it. That it's just one of the best triples in the world. I think it even has that nickname of like the king of triples. So give it a try. As always, as most Belgian beers, quite strong. It has a little bit of a sweetness to it, like a little bit of a banana flavor almost. Very subtle though. It's not a fruity beer. But yeah, no, definitely would recommend it. Typically, you can get it in it's available abroad as well, and usually in these craft beer bars as well. So yeah, Westmalle Triple, and rating would be, gosh, pretty damn high. I'm going to give it a 4.7.
Out of five. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a can. It's Mascaron. It's
Oh
Liquid
God.
Feast.
Oh God.
Kiwi Hazy. New England IPA. 6.2. And why did I chose it? Because uh, I know like this is the first batch of 2026 that they made. Usually they start with this batch, and then like once it's out, and I just like buy a couple of them, and it's my beer for probably last couple of weeks, and it's I love it.
Okay.
So it's pretty nice. You can have probably two. It's enough because I said it's like 6 point, but it's very hazy and very sweet,
Yeah.
and it's just like something like it's starting to be more sunny here in Croatia, and I just love it. When I do something, I just like have it. I will probably have it later today, like evening, or maybe
There you go.
tomorrow. But yeah, to give it a rating, 4.5 out of 5. That's my
There you
rating for
go.
it.
Staying with the high ratings. Well, I guess we're never going
Yeah.
to rate beers that we don't like, so I guess that makes sense.
We
We,
should
we should
probably
actually,
do
yeah,
like a live,
the worst.
maybe a live, like once we're together on a conference, let's just buy a couple random and
That's true. That's a
and
good
then we
idea.
can
Yeah.
and like we can just buy like 5 6 of them, and while we're together, and then we'll just rate it, and then we will just say like this one was
That's a good one. Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
No, we'll
Okay.
definitely do that.
Do you want to close it out?
Yeah, sure. I guess to close us out, attribution, it doesn't have to be as complex as it needs to be. So don't let it intimidate you, and keep your subjectivity. Don't try to put everything in numbers. Not everything can be 100% analyzed. Use it as a guide. I think that's sort of our general statement here. But yeah, as always, guys, feel free to send us ideas, topics, things you'd want to discuss. You can always find Stjepan and myself on LinkedIn. And yeah, with that said, we'll close the loop on this one and see you all next week. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.